for this segment, we have an amazing guest who, of course, has had his fair share of journey through, his A-levels, his GCSEs, and then through medicine, of course. And I want to welcome him on the show today. It's Raihan Mohammed. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. That was quite the introduction.
No, of course. I think I went too quickly into it, of course. You've gone through such a journey, of course. Let's break it down at a time. So how was it, during your GCSEs, and what did you find that was hard about it?
That's going way back now.
Yeah,
so
way
really
back.
testing my memory, getting back to GCSEs. But I think my inspiration for studying medicine would be from my parents. So, when people ask me the question, oh, why did you study medicine? It's been, 15 years almost, and I still haven't got a really good answer as to why I did it. And I think it might be a combination of my dad, my baba, and the inspiration of him being hardworking, working long hours throughout the week in the restaurant, the grit, the determination, combined with Ma, who's having more the soft side, the sort of empathy, the understanding and compassion and caring. Both of them sort of feed into a career of medicine where you're working for long hours, you're working night shifts, and you still have to give a high level of care to your patients. Talking to a 4-year-old girl in one moment, and then immediately an 8-year-old patient with dementia. So it's sort of a combination of the push and the sort of inspiration from my parents, who were always there for me, similar to Daniel was saying, really pushing the academic side of work. But also from, I think, school. So if you're at school and you're quite bright, you kind of get pushed into sort of vocational career paths.
Yes.
But when I think about it now, it's actually quite crazy that you have to commit to a career path that's like medicine or dentistry when you're 14, 15 years old.
It's quite early on.
Exactly, yeah. And your brain's not really fully formed, you barely have any life experiences, and it's quite a big decision to make, quite an irreversible commitment, because you have to choose what GCSEs you do, so I have to choose the science subjects. You have to choose what A-levels to do when you're 16. You have to do a bunch of work experience and volunteering, and to make that decision at quite a young age, knowing that you want to, in a few years' time, go to Malta and study medicine at the Barts medical campus over there, it's a crazy decision at such a young age. And imagine doing that in other parts of your life, at 15, having to pick who you're going to marry for the rest of your life. I mean, my parents would probably love that because I'll finally end up with someone. But, it's crazy to think that you're making such a big decision. But I did it. And so I studied medicine at Cambridge. Now it seems like it's almost a decade ago now, but quite a long time.
No, of course. But then when you made that decision to go to Cambridge, what was it like at the time? Were you nervous? A-level results, I've just got them, now I have to go study medicine, it's full on. Did you get a break? What was it like at the time, if you can remember?
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure. And it's the culmination of that pressure from you've worked so hard when you are 14, 15, doing your GCSEs, you have to do well in them, then you have to do your A-levels, and you have to also continuously do well in those. It sort of bubbles all the way up until you have that achievement that finally you've achieved your goal of getting into medicine, and you've achieved your goal of getting into Cambridge, which is a huge achievement, not just for myself, but also for Ma and Baba. For them, it was an unbelievable amount of pride, for the family, for my sister, for my parents. So it was honestly a sense of relief that I'd been successful. And part of my inspiration was also my Sutu Mama, who also, he also went to Cambridge, but he was first generation, and I'm very grateful of the support that I had from my parents that he didn't have. So I think doing my parents proud was a huge motivation factor for me, and finally getting into Cambridge. But also then the realization as it gets to September that, oh my God, I'm going to have to start at university now, I have to start at Cambridge, so better get myself sorted.
Of course. And then what was it like at Cambridge then? I mean, of course, we all hear, Cambridge is this, Cambridge that, but obviously it's a lot of hard work. What were the tutors like there? Was the support great? How did you find it?
I loved Cambridge. So, I don't know if I'm looking back on it with rose-tinted glasses, that actually is a lot better.
Yeah.
But it really changed me. Aside from the accents, I'm originally from Stoke, and I had a proper Stokey accent. It's the BNP capital, and like Brexit means Brexit. But then I went to Cambridge, and my accent got Cambridgeified, and now I sound like I grew up with a butler and playing polo. But Cambridge was a very steep learning curve, because you're thrown in immediately into lectures 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. in medicine, you were writing 3 to 5 essays per week.
Right.
You held to account for a lot of small teaching sessions called supervisions,
Right.
which is a lot of where the learning happens in small group lessons, and you review the previous week's, let's say, anatomy lectures. And that's honestly a really shaping experience, because your whole mindset changes in those supervisions. You're challenged on not just remembering where bones are or immunology and physiology, but challenged why that happens. And you have to really justify yourself. So you learn a lot of confidence, self-assertion, being able to articulate yourself properly and justify yourself. So it's a lot of skills like that. But also, just broadly speaking, I learned a lot about social comparison, because at Cambridge you are surrounded by the brightest, driven, ambitious people, students in the country. And it can be really inspiring. It can be really motivating to see your peers, your colleagues, medical students as well, who are publishing papers left, right and centre, getting internships at Harvard and so on in their medical during their summers and research placements. And it can be quite inspiring to see yourself and compare yourself to them and see, oh, they can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
But the issue with that is, I think, it can be quite disheartening as well, because you're comparing yourself to lots of people who achieved amazing things, and there's always going to be someone brighter than you, smarter, faster, stronger. And actually you need to focus on yourself. And one of the things that's quite liberating is to realize that your value of your achievements should be about you and not about comparing yourself to others. And the flip side, you shouldn't really be comparing yourself to people who haven't achieved as much, and maybe they just scraped a 2-1, you got a first. And what an sort of impoverished life that is if you're comparing yourself to others and getting satisfaction from your friends not doing as well as you. So I think part of the Cambridge experience was realizing that actually to separate yourself from that social comparison and focus on myself. And that's kind of what I do I have done throughout Cambridge and also beyond that. So talking to friends who are earning loads of money, but I'm sort of carving my own path, carving my own journey. And that's part of what I've done.
Of course, I think that's a great message, because of course, I mean, A stars are great, A's are great, as well as 2-2s or 2-1s. But I think the comparison, I suffer from that a lot when I'm on LinkedIn. I'm just like, oh, someone's done this. I'm like, I'm lacking that. So that is actually a great message. But moving on, of course, you've then moved on to, of course, complete your degree at Cambridge. And of course, what are you doing right now?
Sure. So I studied all this time to do medicine, 6 years of studying, and then I did my first year as a junior doctor up in Nottingham, and I ultimately decided that it wasn't for me. So can you imagine how Asian parents took that in terms of response?
Why was that?
There was various factors. So all through medical school, I did a bunch of different things, and this was again part of Cambridge, where you're thrown in with people doing geography and really ambitious people doing economics and other subjects. You're all sort of mixed together. So a lot of my friends weren't medical students. So I was fortunate I saw and became friends with people who were doing all sorts of other career paths. And so I did things like investment banking, private equity, did a management consulting internship at McKinsey. So I saw all this experience of the broader healthcare sector. And I realized that actually there's so much more out there, and you're quite sheltered in medicine, just in the hospital all the time. And so that ended up pivoting towards NHS management. So I did the management training scheme in the NHS, and now I'm a sort of senior manager in the NHS, working operationally at Imperial Hospital, which is sort of a large university teaching hospital in London. And I absolutely love it. So I do a lot of mentoring and coaching for other junior doctors, other medical students who want to explore portfolio careers, alternative careers, because there is a lot out there for medical students and doctors which we don't really know about.
No, of course. So do you think that 1 year you had as a junior doctor has really helped your journey into this management role?
Absolutely. I think part of being a junior doctor is really character building when you're there on a 12-hour night shift and you have to be up all night and seeing patients left, right and centre. I graduated straight into COVID wards because it was 2020.
Oh, wow.
So I went straight in from the frying pan of Cambridge into the fire of COVID wards. But it was really good experience, Ben. It gives you a lot more credibility that you've actually worked as a doctor, even if you end up doing something else, going into policy or to tech roles. That actually you've worked as a doctor, you have a bit of respect and credibility. And also I managed to get my full medical license. So once you do your first year, and that means I can practice now whenever I want. So I still work as a doctor on the weekends, and I worked about 2 weeks ago, and trying to work about once a month doing a clinical shift to keep my license, to keep my skills. And also it's a really value-adding career. I still enjoy the aspect of talking to patients, treating them, having that problem solving of, they've got X, Y, and Z wrong with them, and they say A, B, and C thing about them and synthesizing it together to come up with a diagnosis. It's still a really valuable and a positive thing that I like doing and enjoy doing. So I still try and keep on my clinical work, but my main work is as an NHS manager.
Okay, fine. So if there was a message that you could give to your young self, what would that be? If you could go back in a few years and be like, you know what, I would have done this different, or maybe tell myself, you know what, be a bit different, what would you say? Sure.
I think there's two quick things I'd say. One is just be brave. There are so many opportunities out there, and there's a concept of something called asymmetric bets, which I think Jeff Bezos talks about it, where you take a decision and an opportunity comes up, and it has a capped downside. So let's say networking is a really good example. As you said, LinkedIn, you see all these people doing, and you can message them. And it's quite nice. Usually I'm the one sliding into DMs, networking always professionally. So it's quite nice being here on the reciprocal end and receiving a DM to be invited on the show. But the asymmetric bets is you have a capped downside, 5 hours, 10 hours a week, spent messaging people, finding out about their career experiences, and but you have an uncapped upside. So someone you meet, someone you talk to might be your next co-founder for your startup, or they might introduce you to someone else, or a book, or an opportunity, a new job. So you invested, 5 hours, but it could be an unlimited upside potential. And so being brave, finding those sort of cubic millimeters of chance to be able to take those opportunities. I think if I look back on it, there were so many opportunities I probably didn't take and I would want to have taken. And the other thing I'd say is about shifting the mindset around goals. Yeah. Because most people have this goal, and medical students and doctors are really guilty of this, which is, I want to be a CEO, or I want to be a neurosurgeon. Right. And the problem with those goals, and I had the same thing as well, is that you have your happiness and your value and your fulfillment linked to one point in time. So you become a CEO, you become a surgeon, and suddenly you think, now what? I'm a bit lost. And that's called a TLIC goal. Okay. There's an idea of having an ATLIC goal, which is, it doesn't have this sort of terminal final endpoint. So instead of saying, oh, my goal is I want to be married, you actually change that to, my goal is marriage. Right. Okay. And so instead of deferring your happiness into the future to one point in time, or once you get there, it's now archived in the past, actually you can have that ongoing happiness and fulfillment from that goal. So having the idea before, as a medical student, as a doctor, I want to lead an organization as a manager now, instead of I want to be a CEO, I want to make a CEO by 25 or whatever it is. Yeah. Actually changing your goals to become more holistic and more ATLIC is a really nice way of approaching sort of career goals and career aspirations. And that's something I would definitely tell myself, 10 years ago. No, of course. I think I'm just moved by what you've just said, because genuinely saying those are really great, of course, messages to yourself and of course, everyone else watching. If someone was in your shoes, what would you say? At the moment they're in A-levels or O-levels, how would they decide their career paths? What would you tell them if there was a career message? I think what Daniel did is the perfect thing. So taking a gap year because you want to take time. As I said, when you're 14, 15 and you're making this decision, it's very different. So take your time, get your experiences, and make a really holistic decision about what you want to do with your career. And it's not an irreversible decision at all. Of course. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Of course, I've learned a lot, and I know everyone else watching has learned a lot as well. But of course, thank you, and inshallah, we will speak to you soon and see what you're up to in the future. Thank you so much for having me. You're very welcome.